our heat exchanger stack, I guess I'd say, for lack of a better term. Yeah, not bad. Let me give you guys a bit of comparison. You guys see this? You see this? You see that's only one. This is dos. This is uno, dos inside, right? So we got twice as wide. I'll put this guy like right here. So this is what we had in the car, and this is what we had. I'll put that. Can you lean this up here without knocking everything over, Mike? Okay. So we're not really losing a whole lot, is what I'm trying to get to. The point that I'm trying to make to you guys. And then we had to, of course, fit the condenser and the transcooler, because the transcooler wasn't there, which I would have used. I wouldn't have cared. But we had no provisions in this guy. This guy is, roughly about the same size as that. But like I said, it's twice as wide. It's two cores instead of just one core. And what happens on these radiators is the coolant will return hot on one side, and then it'll just, however it falls over to the other side, that's kind of how it works. Where this guy, we have all the block off plates, so water's going to come in this side, which is the same side that we need it to be on to clear our intake and all the rest of the mess we got going on there. So this keeps our hoses on the same size, always do that, and splits it, so we get all of this area. So basically one of these passes should be roughly equal to the cooling capacity of our stock radiator. Then it's going to fall back and flow back the other way, and then kind of, zippity-zow out the pipe there. Okay, it was just easier to mount, to just kind of throw it in its home to show you guys what we got going on. So yeah, so that's how that's going to sit. And this guy, it did sit from the factory behind the radiator clip guy right here, but now it's going to sit in. You guys have already seen my pool noodle and how this all goes together. If you haven't, then look at an old one. But that's basically how it's going to fit in there. It's going to sit like this. We're going to have our two fans. It's all sealed up. You guys saw that. On the back, I just made this. You guys saw how I made this. It's just I used the C-channel aluminum, a little bit of gasket from McMaster Car. It was pretty simple. So just a flat plate cut with the holes. On the sides here, we got space for our, this is going to be the steam vent for our overflow tank, which it comes off right here. And then we have another steam vent under here for our heads. This is this main hose from the Volvo. I don't know, I guess that's just because you fill it up here, and I guess it just sits in there and it maintains the level. The sock system worked pretty good. No complaints. The hoses, there's going to be nothing really needed to put this in place. Underneath the radiator, there is a pad that it sits on, that rail, and then the hoses will push it in place, and there'll be like a thick, almost like a pole noodle that goes over and around just to make sure this entirely. Hey everybody, it's Mike from the future. So I wanted to touch on a couple things on this front cooling stack. So just if you happen to be following along and kind of copying what I'm doing, it might save you a bit of trouble in the future. So one thing I did, as you saw me point out, is I put the steam port return a bit low on the radiator, and that did not work at all. I had cooling issues with this guy. Of course, it's Houston, and it's like 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and it's just challenging to cool cars here. But lots of cars are on the road, so I suspect it can be done. So I'm a hit it with a hammer kind of guy. I swapped out the entire fan. I actually ended up ripping this fan off. I got one of those big C6 pulse width modulated guys and put it on the back of this, and that helped. I also moved the steam vent return from about the middle of the radiator to the very top of the radiator, and I tend to think that was my problem. I think that it was locking, it was trapping steam and vapor in the heads, and just creating hot spots that then it couldn't overcome, would be my suspicion. So if you're having trouble, make sure that steam port vent guy is returned nice and high on your cooling system. I probably could have even just keyed it right into the little reservoir guy. But the other thing was that transmission cooler. So I'm not real experienced with automatic transmissions. I've killed two of them at least, maybe three of them. One twice. And anyway, that tube and fin design does not cool for crap in any kind of hot climate. As soon as I got to checking the line temp on the computer, it was just through the roof, like just pegged. So what we did is I went and got one of those Durals, D-R-A-L-E. It was like one of those $300, I think it's called a bar and plate design, something like that. And I got the biggest one they sold, and I took the 8-inch fan off of the radiator shroud, since I didn't use those fans that you saw there, and put it on the front of that as a pusher. And I have the Holly turning it on at like 150 a little sooner in the summertime, and that seems to work great. I can drive around, everything's under, it never gets over 180 even in the summertime. With that guy, I can get on the freeway and it will run basically like 30 degrees over ambient, which is pretty impressive. So just a couple things. The transmission cooler, you can't go big enough on those guys, especially if you're in a hot climate. And return your steam port as high as you can. Everybody probably knows that stuff, but I didn't, so I'm sharing with you. Just a quick tip, I like to do this like cars, like all my cars, just because I like grounds. I'm all about grounds. I'm about the ground life. Good grounds, good positive, good wiring makes for good cars. So what I'll do is I take a stainless steel, get by these little guys. They're stainless steel 304. Yeah, just flanged Allen head bolts. And you can grind the Allen head off, and you still have a nice thick little flange to weld to. You use some 309, clean up your area, and then just weld that sucker right on there. And that way you got a nice stainless steel bolt that's not going to rust. You can put your grounds onto it, and yeah, good non-corroded type connection, I guess. Sort of. Tell me why it won't work in the comments. Thanks. All right, so I was watching one of Matt's. I think Matt was sending me some pictures of one of the cars he was doing. His latest Mustang, the silver one that he's doing with the crazy twin turbo stuff. And he had these poking through the firewall, and I was like, that's brilliant. I'm never, ever, ever running a cable with garments through the firewall ever again. So I was super happy. So happy that I bought like 3 sets of them off of the Amazons, I believe. And we're just getting ready to put those there. That way we have a nice way to get the power through the firewall and to some of the accessories we want to run. So we got a way to get some nice heavy gauge wire to the other side of the firewall, back to the fuel pump. Yeah, I know I just overkill things, but I just like this. It's nice. It's right to the battery. If you got to jump it, bam. Pretty happy. And what was here was, I think, some part of the air conditioning system. So we just did this guy. Let me see. Did we got that? Yeah. Did this guy out on the CAD, and made a sandwich plate. And we'll clean all this stuff off. I got seam sealer over there, so we'll seam seal it and then make sandwich it down. And it's stainless steel, so once it's on there, we don't have to worry about rusties or anything like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. I just wanted to show you guys before I did it, so you can see, how it was done. Pretty easy stuff. Yeah, we got that guy all buttoned up. Yeah, so bam, that's done, sealed up, happy. Front end, we know everything's gonna fit, work, super happy. Last thing I gotta do is we just gotta get, since I got that clearancing done for the front stack, is get the front stack heat exchanger guy in there for its final resting place. Okay, so we got our little pass-through for the firewall, our bulkhead guy. I picked up one of these. You guys saw I welded that little stud in onto the chassis, so that'll be a great little ground point. I'll take it from there to the block, so the block will be well grounded. And I got one of these guys, a little 200 amp guy, and I just like to put these in line with the battery. been around cars long enough to see like stuff will generally be good, but every once in a while you get something that just rattles and eats itself up, and God forbid, you know, that's electric wire, and you get a, you know, 500 cranking amp battery just grounded basically, and that can go really bad quickly. So just throw this guy there in case anything ever bad happens. Hopefully that'll prevent a fire. All right, they say a little bit at a time, and yeah, so we just did a little bit, a couple hours out here, and I do have a battery cable, so this guy is here, and I'm not going to touch it because this thing is actually, oh, it's not actually on there. Anyway, this guy will sit here, and I made it long enough that when it goes to there, that if for some reason you get one of those batteries with the posts opposite or whatever, then you can just switch the cables, no big deal. And then we got our chassis ground. That goes up to the bulkhead. It'll also go down to the engine. And then we have our 200 amp breaker. It goes up to the bulkhead. That also goes down to the starter. We do the little wrappy boys on the wires and heat shrink and all that good stuff. So yeah, not bad. I found these wires need to get tied into the hot too, and they'll come down. They're just kind of hanging out down here. And what I want to do is clean this up, put some nice, you know, braided loom cover on it, and make it kind of come up how it's supposed to around this little covered shock tower guy down here. I'm gonna bring it through this stuff, but I don't have, what I need is like a 6 gauge crimper, so I can crimp these, or even like a 4 gauge or a 2 gauge, so I can just crimp this all into one piece, put all the loom covers on it, shrink wrap, crimp it, and then I'll just have one wire coming down, and it'll look just a lot nicer coming through here. And yeah, so just a little bit at a time. These crimpers, man, you got to check these guys. So just another, you know, cheap tool buy, but boy, these things come in handy when you're making crimps. I'll show you. Well, I can't because I already shrink wrapped the guy, but it smashes them really nice, perfect. And yeah, check one of those out. Kind of worth the money if you're doing heavy gauge crimping stuff. It's late. I got to go get cleaned up and call it an evening. We also ordered some shrink wrap. That was kind of sad. I don't know. What I wanted to do was just originally unplug these connectors and kind of just leave them be. That way, if somebody, you know, wanted to revert it back to stock for some whatever reason, they would have the plugs all there. We wouldn't have had to mess with anything. But these connectors, they're literally falling apart, and the wires are just falling out of them. So I ordered some adhesive lined shrink tubing so we can get those guys. We'll just terminate them, you know, seal them up and kind of leave them there. It was all just engine stuff anyway for the most part, and we'll try to fix, there's a couple connectors that we might have to address, like there's something on top of the brake. It's probably just the brake level sensor, but it is like it just fell apart. So there'll be a couple connectors we'll need to sort of figure out what we got to do to fix stuff. But yeah, the wiring's getting in there. Once I get this wiring kind of laid out, then I can put the front stack in here and just finish off the hoses and air conditioning stuff.